And then we can be like, okay, well, who the daddy? Who would the daddy be? That's, I guess, all. Okay, so I am back with my recap of Fate, the Winx Saga, Season 1, Episode 6. So at this point, Bloom has freed Rosalind. Tara, Musa, Stella went back to check on Beatrice. They realize Beatrice is gone. Before they can do or say anything, Dowling, Ben, and Aisha storm into the office. Caught up. So, of course, Ben is upset. They're all upset with Aisha because then they consider her a snitch.
Hope the brownie points you're getting from this will keep you company when you have no friends.
And they all follow Ben out while Dowling goes down the corridor to see if she can stop what at this point has already happened. So by the time Dowling gets down to the room, Bloom and Rosalind has already slipped out a side entrance. So Ben took the girls back to their dorm room, and of course he's lecturing them about how disappointed he is and how irresponsible it was, and you know how they don't know what they've done and they've put the lives of everyone at the school in danger. And of course Tara jumps up and she's talking to her dad about how he lied to her, and if he had told her, you know, that there was an issue, like how did she know, you know, how to protect herself if she don't really know what's going on. And he turns around and looks at her and basically told them that they needed to cool off. So when he walked out of the room, he sealed the room. So I guess he can make water. I guess would he be considered a water witch or something to that effect? I don't know. So Tara went to try to open the door. She's like, oh, he sealed us in. So she's like, I caught him in a logical, I guess, argument or something, she said, and he locked us in. Okay, so Stella is now going in on Aisha, talking about how she shouldn't have said anything. And
where do you think you're going? I always knew that you were a teacher's pet.
Musa excused herself because she's like, I don't even want, you know, before you guys get into it, let me put my headphones on, because she just don't want to deal with all the emotions.
Can we just take 30 seconds, please? At least let me get my headphones.
And Musa gets into her room. Ben is there, so they talk a little bit while Tara and Stella and Aisha still out in the corridor talking. And Aisha basically said that no, Bloom was selfish and that Dowling has enough to deal with. Now she has to deal with Rosalind and the burned ones.
There are burned ones outside the barrier. Bloom is being selfish.
And Aisha just wasn't here for it. Okay, so at this point, Dowling is looking for Rosalind, and you know, she makes it to the stone. She doesn't see anything. She doesn't hear anything, and she receives a text, or I think maybe she sent a text, basically saying that that you know, the person still hasn't found Rosalind. She left. Rosalind and Bloom appeared. Apparently, Rosalind was able to make herself invisible, and of course, Bloom was like, "I thought you said you were weak," and
I thought you said you were weak, but you couldn't do magic.
She was like, well, that's why I came to the stone, so that she could recharge. And then she started asking her about Esterdale. And Rosalind admitted that what Dowling told her was true.
Everything Farah told you is true.
That they didn't give them all the information.
I lied to them. I told them Esterdale was evacuated.
And that the people there weren't innocent, they were blood witches.
They were humans who drew on sacrifice and death. Blood witches.
And they had kidnapped Bloom, and she has no idea where her biological parents are. And she also told her that the burned ones are actually after her because of the power that she possessed, that they realize that she has the power to destroy them.
That's why the burned ones outside the barrier want you too, to get rid of you.
So we flash to the school, and for some reason, all of a sudden, the electricity started going haywire. The lights are flickering and going out and in. And Sam, of course, they're locked into the room, but Sam can walk through a natural structure. So he's able to walk out, and he decides he's going to go and investigate. That's when you realize that a burned one, they've actually made it into the school. He gets injured. He makes it back to the room. And now they're trying to figure out how they are going to get out. Because remember, the dad locked them in the room. So Rosalind and Bloom are still at the stones, and she's talking to Bloom about using her powers, and she's trying to show her how she can use her powers and how she needs to open up and stop being afraid, and she's more powerful than she could realize. And, you know, eventually Bloom kind of flashed on her like, you know, why would I trust you? You know, I don't even know you.
want me to listen to you and trust you and let you guide me. I just met you.
And you dumped me into the human world without any guidance, and I almost killed my parents.
I almost killed my family because you left me in the first world with no guidance.
Bloom ends up getting a text basically saying that burn ones are at the school and we're locked. Basically, they're locked in the room and they need help. And so Rosalind decided, she's still too weak to fight, and so she sent Bloom on ahead to deal with it. Riven and one of the other soldiers, they made it into, I guess, what was that, the greenhouse? I believe that's where they were. And Riven's scary behind. He's like, well, I don't see anything. Maybe we should go. And of course, she wanted to proceed to try to figure out what's going on. They heard a noise. She wanted to go and investigate. And that's when they saw some of these students. I guess they were in hiding, and they decided they were going to come out and run out. She escorted them out, and she told Riven to continue on to see if there were any more, any other students that needed help. So as he proceeded in, he saw Dane. Dane was the one that was able to get Beatrice out of the corridor, and he got her to the greenhouse where he's been trying to help her. Riven wasn't initially on board. He was like, "We need to go. It is what it is."
Yeah, well, it sucks for her. Come on, I'm not leaving her.
And of course, Dane is begging him to help. Beatrice. I'm still confused as to how they developed this close friendship. I'm still confused by that. And eventually, Riven decided to help. So Sky and Bloom are making their way to the room. You got students everywhere, and of course he's not happy. He's basically telling her about he's upset that she drugged him, and how he was upset because he trusted her and how he opened up to her. And
I opened up to you, Bloom. I told you shit I had never told anyone.
He felt betrayed, and she's talking about Rosalind, how maybe things aren't as simple as you think they are. Maybe, she wasn't wrong. She did what she thought was right.
Everyone's just doing what they thought was right.
And Sky basically pointed out that just because somebody thinks what they're doing is right doesn't make it right.
Just because somebody thinks what they did was right, that doesn't mean that it is.
So we flash back to the room, and they're still trying to keep Sam as comfortable as possible. Sky and Bloom make it to the room. They end up having to break the door down, and Sky ends up helping Sam. He is escorted them to the courtyard where they are sealing all the windows in the entrance, and they're trying to get all the students there. So Ben is still trying to patch up Marco. Marco wants to fight. He was like, I don't know what's going to happen, but he's determined he's going to go down swinging. And so Ben patched him up, I guess, as best he could, and Marco got up as quickly as he could to go and fight, do what he needed to do. And so this is when he sees that Sam is injured, and Tara, he says, why didn't you bring him to us sooner?
Why didn't you bring him immediately?
And so Tara was like, because we were locked in, remember?
We were locked in our room, Dad. Remember?
And so she got on my nerves, because it's like, first of all, he didn't even know that Sam was there. And there was no way for him to know that you guys in your infinite wisdom wouldn't have gone out and made things a lot worse. So I felt like that was unfair. But anywho, so now he's focused on trying to patch his son up and keep his son alive as long as possible. So while they're all trying to do what they can to help, Dowling she stands up and she basically gives them an update, basically saying, at this point, you guys are aware that the burned ones have made it through the barriers. Some have even made it to the school.
Burned ones have infiltrated the barrier.
The power, we're having issues with these powers and electricity.
For some reason, the magical energy wells which power everything at the school have failed.
But I was able to speak to Queen Luna, and she's agreed to send troops.
And the Stellarian troops are on their way.
But the problem is that, they may not arrive in time. So she's trying to get them to understand that everybody's going to have to step up. Everybody's going to have to do their part for as long as it takes to hold them off until the troops arrive. So after that conversation, Sky and Stella have this long overdue conversation, and she talked about how she ran away, but her mom was going to be there soon. So basically, it was all in vain. And of course, Sky jumps in like, you know, I can help you out. I could try to hide you if you want. And she basically said that no, you know, things were right the first time. No, we should have never gotten back together. She was like, we're either codependent or toxic.
We are codependent at best, toxic at worst.
And I just think it's best that we leave things the way they were. And so there was a much long overdue conversation, and I agree. So Bloom runs over to talk to Dowling, and she's telling her that, you know, maybe, you know, Rosalind is right.
Rosalind isn't the monster you think she is. She had a reason to lie.
And, you know, how, you know, the people were innocent, how they was practicing blood magic.
They were blood witches.
And Dowling is like, you know, she always could, you know, manipulate, you know, people, and, you know, she's manipulating you. She's giving you just enough to, I guess, get you to do whatever it is that she's trying to get you to do.
Rosalind gave you just enough information to string you along.
And Bloom is, you know, still not trying to hear what Dowling has said.
Is your ego so fragile that you can't even consider for a minute that you might be wrong about her?
You know, it's amazing to me because those people have only known her for I don't know how many decades, and Bloom is, you know, this attitude like she knows her more than the people who has kept her in prison all these years. I think is just so amazing. It's funny to me. And eventually Dowling was like, well, if this is the case, then why isn't she here? Why isn't she here helping us?
Not her. And why isn't she telling me this herself?
And so Bloom is I'm saying, well, she's weak. She needed to recharge. And so that's when Dowling realized, she was like, oh, so she's at the stones. So Dowling ends up having to explain to Bloom that the stones are a conduit.
Stone Circle is a conduit to the magic of the land. That magic powers everything at Alfea.
And knowing that Rosalind is there and she's siphoning off this power, that's why the barrier didn't hold, and that's why the electricity at the school is going haywire, because she's sucking up all the power. Your interference and basically you're not listening is the reason why we're in this position.
Your actions are the reason the school's in danger, Bloom. I'd say you've done enough.
So I think it's best that you find the other fire fairies and help them seal up the entrances. So Dane and Riven are still in the greenhouse, and they're trying to whip up something to help Beatrice. Somehow Riven was able to whip up some potion of some sort. And of course Dane is like, well, how did you know how to do that? And then he admitted that he used to hang out with Tara.
Well, believe it or not, Tara and I used to hang out a bunch here.
And how Tara isn't the worst person.
Look, I deny saying this, but she's not the worst.
And how he may have led him astray this term. And then he starts asking him questions about his sexualities, because he's kind of confused, like, what is your attachment to Beatrice? I mean, you are gay, right? Or what's going on? And, you know, Dane ends up saying that he admitted that he thought that Rimmel was hot.
I think you're hot.
But he said that he liked Beatrice too, but just in a different way.
She is too, in a different way.
And then eventually, whatever Riven whipped up aroused Beatrice, and so now she is up and about. So Aisha is now talking to Stella, and I guess she's telling her what Dowling said, and how, you know how Bloom is. She's not going to sit still, especially if she thinks things are her fault. Of course, Stella is saying, well, you know, this would be an issue if you hadn't went and, you know, told on your best friend.
If only her friend hadn't turned on her.
Really?
You know, this whole thing. And of course, Aisha was like, are you still on that? And it's like, okay, Bloom risked the lives of how many hundreds, maybe even thousands of students and staff at this school to achieve what now? So this idea, Aisha ends up apologizing, which I'm like, okay, I would never apologize. I'm like, I didn't agree to put my life on the line, and neither did any of the other students or faculty. That was all the decision that the four of you made, so that one single student or person can get some answers. So I was like, I wouldn't apologize for shit. No, I ain't sorry. But that's not what she did. She apologized.
I figured the fact that I'm coming to you, of all people, would tell you that I'm sorry.
And now she's like, well, I should have done that. And, the mere fact that I'm coming to talk to you about it should tell you how sorry I am. And what do you think we should do? And then eventually Bloom walks up and basically says that I need your help. And so she found the entrance, another secret entrance that Rosalind told her about through the kitchen to get outside. And so she took them through there and they left. Okay, so Silva, he decides that he doesn't know what's going to happen, and he decides it's time for him to come clean to Sky about what happened with Andreas, his father. And he was telling him about Ardel and how once he realized what was about to happen, he went to stop it. I believe Andreas was trying to prevent him from stopping them from destroying Ardel. He was trying to appeal to Andreas, I guess, moral compass, which he didn't have, whatever the case may be. And Andreas couldn't risk Silva telling anyone, so a fight ensues. Silva ends up stabbing Andreas at Ardel. But the thing is, he was too late. By the time he made it up the hill, they had already destroyed Ardel. And so all this time, he told Sky that his father died in battle, but he didn't say that his father died at his hands. And of course, at this point, Sky's upset because he's saying, your father, all these years you told me that my father was a hero. And, Silva's like, he was, in a way. He saved a lot of lives before that time. He, did a lot of good. But we're all flawed. And of course, Sky he's pissed. So at this point, the burned ones are just outside the door. It's only a matter of time before they make their way in. Eventually they do. And just as one was about to attack this soldier, they kind of all ran away. And I believe it was Silva that said it seemed like they're following someone. And that's when Dowling realized that Bloom must be out of the school. She got out some kind of way and she's, moving away from the building. So at this point, the burned ones are closing in on Bloom, Stella, and Aisha. Bloom decides, she needs to stop being afraid and she needs to stand up and fight because, no matter where she goes, they're going to follow her. And of course, Aisha decides, she's going to stay because she's the water fairy. So if things get out of control, she can try to get things back, into some kind of control. And of course, Stella's there also. And so a fight ensues and Bloom allows, she's now able to access her full powers, and now she's flying, and then the wings appear. And if you remember back to the first episode where she was talking to Dowling, and she asked about the wings, and of course Dowling was like, that was many centuries ago, or it's been many years since we've been able to access that kind of magic. But here she is with her wings, and she's all alight and all aglow, and she's able to kill all of the burned ones. And as soon as she killed them, you see that they're just men lying on the ground at this point. So Dowling arrived, and of course she was happy that Bloom, they were still alive, and that Bloom was able to fight them off. But then she could see that Bloom was weak; she was drained, and so Stella and Aisha helped Bloom back to their room. So, just like that, they can start to see Sam improve. So they know that at least we know that one of the burned ones that Bloom killed was the one that scratched Sam. Okay, so now that Beatrice is awake, Riven and Dane, they're like, we need to get back before, I guess, they notice that we're missing. And Beatrice was like, well, you should stick around, and hear what Rosalind has to say.
We should get back.
We should.
Rosalind will be here soon. Hear her out.
And, her and my dad have a plan.
Her and my dad have a plan.
And then, of course, Riven was like, your dad sent you here? And she's like, well, he's not really my dad.
Technically, he's not my dad, but he'll know what to do.
But basically, y'all should just stick around and see what they got to say. So Dowling and Silva, they're all, still standing by the carcasses of what was the burned ones. You see some students kind of sporadically in the background just standing around looking at what's going on. And Silva's like, okay, well, what happened? And Dowling says, she transformed. And by his facial expression, I guess he knew what that meant. And then she told him that the people at Asterdale were practicing blood. They were blood witches.
She told Bloom the settlers of Asterdale weren't civilians, they were blood witches.
And she was like, that was a secret that for some reason Rosalind kept from us. And so he's like, okay, so wait a minute. So everything that I did, everything that I've done, basically he was saying everything that he did was in vain.
So everything we did to try and stop.
And that was basically him getting into a fight with Andreas and killing Andreas and just everything. So Sky is still having a difficult time dealing with what Silva told him. And, you know, he was pretty much up all night, I guess, going over everything in his head. Eventually, it's morning. Bloom walks over to talk to him. And he's like, you know, I heard a rumor that you went full fairy last night. And initially, she was like, well, whether the rumor's good or bad. Then eventually, she was like, you know, I don't even care. You know, she's come to terms with, I guess, who she is. And she was like, I belong here. And, I mean, that's that. And she could see that something was bothering him. And so she asked him, and he basically said, oh, you know, really, it's nothing to worry about. And I'm thinking at this point, Sky is kind of closing himself off, where once he was kind of open, I guess he's now feeling like he don't know who he could trust. So I guess he really didn't want to say too much to her. So while they were talking, Dowling eventually walks out, and you can see that she wanted to talk to Bloom. And so the next scene is Dowling and Bloom in Dowling's office, and Bloom apologizing for being arrogant and being annoying and just being full of shit. And Dowling basically said, you know, all is forgiven. And you know, Dowling did admit that, you know, I made some mistakes and, you know, maybe I could have been more forthcoming with some information. And they hugged. And when they hugged, it was almost like, I'm like, are we going to find out that Dowling is Bloom's mother? And then we were like, okay, well, who the daddy? Who would the daddy be? They kind of talked, and it seemed like their relationship is in a good place at this point. So Bloom has decided that, you know, it's time to go home and talk to her parents and basically let them know what was going on. You know, Dowling was okay with that, but then she also, you know, had to warn her that not everybody's going to be as accepting or understanding. And so you kind of see this montage of Bloom sitting down with her parents and showing them her powers and kind of the rest of the girls, because she brought Stella, Musa, Tara, and Aisha went with her. And so, you know, they were having a good time. I guess the parents were upset, you know, excited that, you know, she had finally had some friends, whereas one time she was really closed off and alone. And so it's like, it was a lot for them to deal with. But it seemed like they were really happy for her. It seems like they were, you know, all the girls, they were all happy and having a great time. And I'm trying to figure out, like, are the parents, are we going to find out that the parents are blood witches too? Is that going to come out at some point? Because they took that stuff really well for, you know, for people to just not be in the know about what's going on. So I don't know. So while that's going on, Sky and Silva they're having a conversation, and then this caravan pulls up all these cars and then they find out it's Queen Luna, and she steps out of the car and basically said that she was putting Silva under arrest.
It's with a heavy heart I must place you under arrest.
For attempted murder of Andreas.
The attempted murder of Andreas of Heraklion.
And so, just so you know, old Andreas steps on out the car. And so Sky, you know, this is so many years since he's seen his dad. So, I mean, he recognized, he knew it was his father. And so now they're making eye contact. Of course, Silva is shocked because as far as he knew, Andreas was dead. And they take Silva into custody. So Dowling is standing over the grave. She decided she was going to bury the men who were the burned ones, and Rosalind appeared. And they talked. And she admitted that basically she orchestrated this whole thing because she wanted to test Bloom.
You let burned ones into the school to test her.
And of course Dowling was upset. She was like, you put all of us, all the students here at risk, all because you wanted to test Bloom. And she was like, you know, there's something coming. And she basically told Dowling that I don't think that your the right person to basically be in charge when basically the you-know-what hits the fan.
I fear you lack the composure to lead the next generation into it.
And there it is.
And that there's going to, basically there's been a change in power, and then you can see flashes of them removing Dowling's photo and putting Rosalind's photo up as now the head mistress. Andreas is now going to fill in where Silva, whatever position Silva played at the school. You can see Ben, he's still there, and I guess he don't have any choice but to acquiesce. Like, I mean, what else is he going to do? And she basically told Dowling that she wanted her to take a leave of absence.
I think you should take a sabbatical.
And Dowling basically is like, no, I'm not going to leave my students in your hands, leave my school in your hands.
There's no way I'm leaving the school in your hands.
And so she ends up killing Dowling. As far as we know that as if Andreas has anything to say about it, dead don't stay dead. So we don't know if Dowling was one step ahead, because she know how Rosalind is, and she's, you know, planned for something. We don't know. I guess we won't. Again, something else we won't find out until the next season, if they have a second season. But at this point, Dowling is dead. We also find out that Beatrice, when she was talking to Bloom about she was raised by a friend, she was raised by Andreas. Anywho, so as the girls were coming back to the school, they're all excited, and you know, they're looking forward to the future, the semester, whatever the case may be. And who are they confronted with? Andreas, Queen Luna, and Rosalind, basically welcoming them back to the school. And that's pretty much how this episode ends. All right. Well, I'm going to end this here, and I will talk to you guys later.